Welcome everyone to another episode of Willow's Weather Briefing. Today is Thursday, May 15th, 2025. Here we go. We are having an extended period of severe weather risks throughout much of the eastern United States. For today, it is much of the Midwest and Great Lakes regions that are of most concern. Then that risk will migrate southward towards the mid-south, and early next week we have severe weather risks for the central and southern plains. We also have heavy rain and flash flooding possible for portions of the Ohio valleys associated with tomorrow's severe weather risk, as well as some flash flooding concerns next week in Missouri. Also, don't forget the dangerous heat in portions of Texas, well above average for multiple days on end. So here is a look at satellite. We have our low pressure system that is going to cause our severe weather today in the Midwest, spinning over the northern plains. We also have that subtropical jet bringing some nice clouds into the southern plains regions. Here's our new drought monitor. It is Thursday, so a new drought monitor has been released. Still, the most effective regions are areas of Central California. Florida is also under a pretty significant drought relative for their area. And also the Delmarva region up towards the northeast is also experiencing a pretty impactful drought up there. Also, small portions of Michigan as well experiencing some significant drought. Here's our current watches and warnings. Currently high winds over the northern plains associated with that surface low pressure system. We also have hazardous heat over areas of southern Texas. Otherwise, pretty quiet across the United States this morning. So here is our surface chart today. We have a widespread severe weather risk mainly for wind and hail, but also some significant tornadoes cannot be ruled out. We also have a severe weather risk here in Virginia associated with that low pressure system. Also over here in the northwest, we have scattered mountain snow and showers, mainly associated with the lingering vorticity up here, bringing some snow into the higher elevations, especially these areas down here in the mid-Rockies. On day 2, we also have a heavy rain flash flooding risk as well as a severe weather risk over here across the mid-south. I know earlier this year, this area saw a ton of flash flooding and severe weather, but it looks like that is going to continue associated with the stalling front and sufficient ingredients for severe weather. Finally, day 3, we have a severe weather risk over here in the mid-Atlantic, and also a severe weather risk here in the southern plains on Saturday. Looking at our excessive rainfall outlook, day 1, marginal risks over the northern plains and Delmarva regions over to the Lake Erie region. Tomorrow, I'm more concerned of flash flooding here in the mid-south towards the middle Appalachians, associated with sufficient instability and possibly training slow-moving storms. We expect about 2+ per inch hour rates in these areas that experience convection, and that may train over and over, so some areas could expect very locally expect pretty heavy rainfall tomorrow. On day 3, marginal risks of excessive rainfall over here from the southern plains to the southeast, as well as New England. Day 4, on Sunday, we have a slight risk over southern Missouri for enhanced rainfall, and also pockets of marginal risk associated with that kind of cold air aloft-induced convection here in the Great Basin, as well as far northern New England. And finally, day 5, associated with our brand new low pressure system, marginal risk of excessive rainfall for a widespread area of the central United States, as well as areas near the Four Corners region. So here we go. This is going to be our main story for the next, I don't know, foreseeable future, to be honest. The next week, we will just have constant severe weather to talk about because of our active pattern. Today, we have an enhanced risk throughout the upper Mississippi River Valley down towards the Great Lakes and the Midwestern regions. Our main focus today, there's going to be a corridor of significant tornado risk, as well as a broader 5% risk throughout the area. Wind, we expect significant wind throughout most of this, but as the system turns into a more linear mode, we do expect the wind risk to increase towards areas such as northeastern Indiana and southern Michigan. And finally, I think the biggest story of today is going to be the hail. The thermodynamic and kinematic profiles are definitely sufficient for some giant hail, possibly 3 inches or larger. And of course, we can't forget our slight risk here in Virginia, primarily associated with a wind and hail risk. On day 2, we have that stalling boundary making its way down towards the mid-south. This day kind of looks a little concerning in terms of your tornado risk. I mean, we have a broad area of a 10 hatched here. I believe the main concern is storm mode because of the initiation. We have a stalling front, and it's also slow moving, which may cause storms to cluster up a bit more. But nevertheless, there is a significant tornado risk. The kinematic profiles are all there for a all-hazard severe risk. So spatial coverage down here will definitely be more widespread, so areas in here should definitely be weather aware for all hazards. Looking at day 3, we have dual slight risks, one here in the southern plains to the Ozarks region, and one over here in the mid-Atlantic to Delmarva. On Saturday, this is expected to be a relative lull of at least significance in severe weather, though we might see pockets of fairly large hail in areas such as northern Texas. And finally, our extended range day 4 through 5. On day 4, Sunday, we do have a 15% risk over here in the central to southern plains. On day 5, the dry line will migrate a little bit east, but due to the nature of the surface low, it is primarily the same areas, but extended a bit eastward. I feel like Monday is going to be our main concern for our kinematic profiles, especially for tornadoes. Finally, on day 6 as well, we will see a continuation of that severe weather risk, and that is going to just continue to migrate eastward. So before we go into models, let's just quickly look at our heat risk today. A major heat risk over southern Texas. Again, as I've said before, just multiple days of above 100-degree heat for much of these areas. And that will just continue to build, continue to impinge on the southern Texas region, thanks to that lingering high pressure that will just stay here for a while. Expect extreme heat risks associated with multiple days of 100-degree temperatures in areas such as San Antonio and points southwest towards the Mexico border, as well as areas just west of Houston. But overall, generally, southern Texas should all be prepared for an extended period of heat. Looking at our extended range hazards over here, we have flooding risks over the central plains and towards the midwestern region, as well as portions of the southern plains and southeast. Of course, we have that hazardous heat risk and our severe weather risk over here in the central to southern plains. So let's dive into the models. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on here, like yesterday, so buckle in. This is going to be a very active pattern. So we see this initial trough here. This is going to be responsible for our severe weather today. We could see the impingement of the subtropical jet down here, and also the polar jet and the upper level low associated with that up here. Now, here is my personal opinion. You'll have storms initiate over here in Wisconsin, and we'll take a look at the precipitation type a bit. But because of this impingement of the subtropical jet down here and convective signals for over here, I think just around these regions, maybe just south of Chicago, just around I-80 south, we'll have a pretty good chance of seeing at least the most conducive environments for significant severe weather. and that's mainly due to the subtropical jet impinging into the region. So moving forward, we see this upper level low kind of meanders across the upper Great Lakes regions, and then enhanced flow will continue into Friday, which is where we see the severe weather risk down here associated with the pretty stalling boundary. However, in my opinion, tomorrow's mode will be quite messy given the orientation of the boundary and the fact that it's stalling, and the fact that our bulk shear vectors, which is kind of a proxy for storm motion, kind of trains along that boundary. So, but depending on any short scale forcings, if anything initiates, let's say like down here, south of the boundary, then we could see some more isolated development. But that is some details that just cannot be resolved right now. So we see the migration of the upper level low east, and then we see our low pressure system down here. We see an initial troughing over here beginning in Sunday 12Z, and this will cause our response for Sunday's threats. However, you can see that there is another trough aiming to, or another, at least, center of the trough aiming to dig into the central United States, or the western United States as well. So we kind of have two punches of potentially significant severe weather here, one of which is associated with this initial troughing and ejection, and one of it is associated with the second, much larger one on Monday. And this is the primary reason why I think Monday is going to be the bigger threat out of the two in the central to southern plains, because we have this enhanced flow pinging aloft. Compare this to the previous day on Sunday, not terribly. Your jet streak isn't really impinging into the area, but definitely on Monday it is. So moving a bit more forward, we could see a continuation of that troughing into the eastern, or more towards the midwestern United States, and that will also cause a severe weather risk on Tuesday because that trough is just staying here. And of course, enhanced flow aloft brings your shear needed for severe thunderstorms. Looking at our surface, let's go ahead and look at our precipitation type. Today we have initiation initially along the Wisconsin-Minnesota region, and that'll migrate east, and then we'll see an invigoration of convection towards those areas of concern that I said before. There are a little bit of convective responses, or not convective responsive, precipitation responses in these areas, but we'll look at some finer scale models that sort of depict this more clearly. Into Friday, we see a strong convective system associated with this stalling boundary. We're primarily concerned of storms that are going to form in the open warm sector just south of these. As you can see here, there's some precipitation responses down here in the south, such as northern Tennessee and southwestern Kentucky. So I believe that is what you have to watch out most for. And also the initial development before things grow upscale at around 4 p.m. as well, in the areas of most concern. So this surface low will migrate east, a period of relatively quiet severe weather until eventually we get another low pressure system to develop across the Rockies on Sunday, right here. A ton of convection progged here in areas of the central and southern plains. This low will sort of very slowly migrate east, but as well, we have a reinvigoration of that low on Monday here, and as you can see, convection is progged here in areas such as Oklahoma, Kansas, and western Missouri. And kind of the same deal, the surface low will migrate eastward, and then on Tuesday, we'll see more convection over here. However, the GFS tends to be a bit more progressive with the translation of these surface lows and troughs, so that's why the SVC actually has the risk further west here. This might be a progressive bias in the GFS that's progging convection here, instead of the areas that the SPC demarcated. All right, let's go ahead and focus in a little bit on our upcoming severe weather threats. Let's just first go ahead and look at our dew points here on the Oh, the 12Z HRRR is coming out, but let's look at the NAM for now. So the NAM tends to have a moist bias. Dew points are probably not going to be this high. As you can see, our warm sector is extremely large around the Midwest, reaching all the way up towards northern Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. But our focus is going to be these higher dew points further down south. And here's our boundary here. This is like a Pacific front / cold front, and possibly even some semblance of a dry line boundary down here towards Illinois. This is one reason why I think that the convection down here will be a little bit more limited in Illinois, is because the boundary here has a little less convergence, a little more chance for more discrete thermals to reach the free convection line, and possibly a more discrete mode down here in Illinois. And that boundary will push east along with its associated convection, and we can see here a lot of signals for convection all over the Midwestern United States. Let's take a look at our instability values. Let's go ahead and look at surface-based CAPE. Of course, plenty of instability to work with. NAM overdoing the instability by probably quite a big margin because of its bias towards cooler and moisture temperatures, but elevated CAPE values possibly around the 3,000 vicinity, especially with southern extent with that moisture. But NAM probably overdoing it. For example, let's go ahead and look at a model such as the HRRR. Let's go ahead and just look at 11Z since we're so close to the event. And yeah, you can see here that the stability values are a bit smaller, but still around the 3,000 to 4,000 joules per kilogram vicinity, which is plenty enough for severe weather. Let's also look at our bulk shear, our probability for supercells, or our main ingredient for supercells. And you can see what I meant here with the subtropical jet impinging into the area. Look at this, bulk shear values in Illinois around 50 or so knots. And if we can get any discrete development across that dry line here, then I sincerely believe that this is going to be your biggest threat for something like tornadoes. And also possibly some big hail as well. Speaking of tornadoes, let's look at our low-level storm relative helicity. This is your pretty much your measure of quote-unquote streamwiseness of your right-moving supercell shear. And all in all, that's a lot of big words, a lot of complicated words, but the higher the number, the more chance you have for tornadoes. That's all you really have to know. And we get this interesting response kind of off the advective region of the lake. We have enhanced storm relative helicity kind of caused by, you know, our flow in the low levels is from the southeast, so we get this enhanced shear region here, but that comes at the expense, since you're advecting cooler temperatures off the lake, comes at the expense of meager low-level instability, which is arguably more important for tornadoes, so I don't know how exactly this will affect your tornado chances up here, but nonetheless, these storms up here will interact with that advective regime and possibly throw a wrench in the entire thing. But again, what we're looking at here in areas such as East Central Illinois and northwestern Indiana, we can see an enhancement of that storm relative helicity over here associated with our low-level jet, which is a nocturnal response to the low-level winds either caused by extratropical cyclones or temperature gradient changes. So I think that kind of covers it. All in all, areas all over the risk area in the Midwest today should be well aware for weather warnings, especially for hail, and possibly in some certain regimes you should be concerned of a pretty strong tornado coming through. So let's go ahead and zoom out a bit. Let's go ahead and look back at our instability values. Our instability will continue. Let's also go ahead and change our or run here so we can get a better idea on instability tomorrow. Again, a continuation of the instability associated with the upper level trough and continued moisture return down here in the mid-south. Large values of instability progs here along that stalled frontal boundary, which is situated up here across southern Illinois, Indiana. So again, I'm not going to take any soundings for brevity. Possibly tomorrow I'll take some soundings over here, but more of the story, be aware for severe weather, especially for all hazards, large hail, wind, and tornadoes. So let's just quickly go ahead and look at our ensemble models. Ensembles are a good way to forecast ranges that are a bit farther away, that aren't are a bit more uncertain, and we want to get more of a broad range of solutions for upcoming severe weather. So in the Central Plains, the mean ensemble guidance gives us instability above 3,000 joules per kilogram across the Central to Southern Plains, so that is obviously not going to be an issue. Let's go ahead and look at our bulk shear as well. And initially on Sunday, we do have sufficient bulk shear values, but nothing too extreme. But I suspect, as we move on to Tuesday, we do get elevated values, not as elevated as I thought we would get, but definitely marginally higher than Monday's. Finally, let's go ahead and look at Wednesday. Again, bulk shear values overspread our severe weather region of interest. Let's go ahead and look at our MSLP, our mean sea level pressure, see where our surface low is going to occur. Here, a surface low, kind of very good agreement for Sunday over here in the Eastern Rockies. On Tuesday, a bit less agreement, but kind of sort of towards a similar area. And then this is where we're going to have the most spread, not only because it's farther away, because we're not really sure how progressive this low will travel. On Tuesday, we see a lot of spread, still a lot of uncertainty, but again, because of the innate biases of the GFS, the SPC has opted to put the severe weather risk a bit westward. Where the warm sector in a surface low like this, if we take the mean at face value, warm sector would overspread these regions of the mid-Mississippi River Valley down to the mid-south, but because of the innate biases of the GFS, the SPC has elected to put the risk a bit further west. Let's go ahead and look at our dew points. Our dew points will be no problem for this event. This is the 10th to 90th percentile, and we can see 70s dew points reaching up to northern Oklahoma. On Sunday, on Monday, pretty much the same deal, but the warm sector is a bit more widespread over the southern United States. And then finally, on Wednesday, our dew points continue to be transported a bit more uncertain because we're not really sure where the placement of the low is going to be, but still a broad open warm sector for severe weather. All right, so our 6 to 10 day temperature outlook is much below average for the northern United States and above average for much of the southern United States. And our 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook is much above average for the eastern United States and below average for areas such as the Great Basin into California. So that is going to be it for today's weather briefing. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you have any constructive criticisms, please leave it in the comments down below. And of course, if you want any specific information for your area, please refer to your local broadcaster and National Weather Service meteorologists. Thank you and have a great day.